Yeah. Do got a couple prop bets to mention. There's one I really like. All right. Welcome to UFC Live for Lock right here on Awesemo.com. I am Jason Floyd, and we are here to break UFC Vegas 21 down for you. Of course, as always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr., who's getting a little sparring action in this morning. Anyone who follows Pete on social media at Pete the Heat MMA, you saw that little sparring footage. Still having to do the mask thing, man. That's got to make things a little tough.
Yeah, I've been, doing a lot of pad work, a lot of, sparring, grappling, everything. But with elevation mask on, it's a little difficult. But thanks for joining us, guys. We're here to break down UFC Vegas 21. Interesting card. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one as well. Of course, today's show is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Head over to monkeyknifefight.com. Use the promo code Awesemo. And when you do that, you'll get an instant first match deposit bonus up to $50. So sign up today. Of course, they're a player props-based contest. We're going to mention about some of those Monkey Knife Fight prop bets throughout the show. Did not do well on Monkey Knife Fight last night. I'll tell you that. I had 3 plays in the NBA, and none of them came through. So hopefully MMA treats me a little better here tonight. Had some good luck in NBA a little early on this week. So now I got to get back some of that money I had won last week in terms of the UFC. But Pete, let's get right into this. Let's talk a little bit. By the way, also we'll mention over on Awesemo.com, MMA fighter projections are free on the site. So take that out, check it out to help you develop your lines here today for UFC Vegas 21. Of course, Pete, on Thursday, we talked about we broke down all the fights, roster construction. This is kind of in a way been a tough one for me, primarily because of, one of the other guys, one of the other producers here was asking me earlier on today. He's like, who do you really like? And I'm like, I can go many places. Like I don't have a ton of I am all in on this fighter, even though I do think I'm overexposed on one fighter.
Yeah, it's an interesting card. I mean, usually the main event is kind of like a no-brainer. You want to roster it. I do think that the matchup potentially makes it a little bit avoidable for DFS lineups. I don't have 100% exposure to the main event like I normally do. 100% is aggressive. I usually have a large percentage towards the main event. But for this week, I took a little bit of an underweight approach, still favoring Edwards. Muhammad's in some of my lineups, but overall, it's an interesting card. And, for me, for roster construction, I started at the co-main event, and I'm seeing Misha Cirkunov getting so much love from everybody. And I know that you like Misha Cirkunov, and there's plenty of people that, are making the case for Misha Cirkunov. And I think it's a fight that we talked about that you have to roster. But I'm taking an aggressive stance today on Ryan Spann. I really like him.
I'll tell you, I think there's at least 2 fights in this card that, in my mind, I view as must roster fights. The fight you just mentioned, Cirkunov and Spann. The other one's going to be the first fight of the night of Matthew Schmelsberger and Jason Witt. To me, those are the 2 fights that you have to roster. I think that in terms of GPPs, those are the fights that you have to hit. Look, I think Cirkunov Spann's a 50-50 fight. I think it comes down to if Cirkunov can get the takedown. If he gets the takedown, I'm just saying, I definitely love the prop bet of Misha by sub plus 179. It's not my favorite prop bet. My favorite prop bet, Dan Ige by decision plus 155.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can't hate on it. I know that there's going to be plenty of people being exposed to Misha Cirkunov. You guys know that I'm an aggressive player, so I like to uncheck people a lot, and then I like to boost up my exposure to other people, or even sometimes lock people in. I'm going ham with Ryan Spann. I really am. He's in all of my lineups, and I can honestly say that it's just like a read for me. He could go out there and get out grappled and submitted. Yeah, no problem at all. But I have seen Misha Cirkunov be, a liability on the feet, defensively. And I just think that Spann, even though he didn't look so good at the weigh-ins yesterday and Serkinov looked like an action figure, I think that Spann is just, you know what I mean? Like, he's an underdog under 8,000, and I look at him like, I really see him winning this fight. Like, I really do.
Look, as I said, I think it just comes down to who gets the takedown. If Serkinov gets the takedown, I think that changes. If this thing plays on the feet, Pete, I'm with you. If it stays on the feet, I like Ryan Spann that spot. I am overweight on Serkinov in this one. I know I was finishing up Alliance right before we did the show, and I get my CSV together, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, oof, man, I am overweight because I start kind of looking at it. I'm like, okay, who am I overweight on? I had like a sprinkle of Bilal Muhammad, a little bit more of Leon Edwards, but I'm with you. I don't think this is one of those weeks where you have to have the main event lined in there. We'll mention a question over in our Slack account. Of course, that's the best way to get your question here for our subscribers, where Trip says, how much does Spann's rough weight cut worry you?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. I mean, it's I didn't actually see. Did he end up making weight on a second attempt?
Okay, yeah, he may wait. Yeah.
I'm not so worried about it, because like, if he felt truly drained, that's when you see that last half pound, however much he was over, where they just decide, you know what, I need to conserve all my energy and not even attempt. So, I mean, like, he did not look good in comparison to Misha Serkinov. Like, if you were looking at body versus body, Misha Serkinov looked like he was a weight class higher almost. I understand that Spann's a longer frame and, a big guy still, but Misha Serkinov, like, it's impressive that he makes 205 pounds. But for me, I got my Spann blinders on. You're overexposed to Serkinov. I'm overexposed to Ryan Spann. I think it's, the true answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Hedging your bets some way and having exposure to both sides. It's a pivotal fight for sure. There's no way I'm avoiding that co-main event.
Of course, if you ever do miss any of our shows here on YouTube, you can check them out, a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network, and leave a 5-star rating and review on one of our podcast channels with your Twitter handle and email address. And you'll be eligible to win up a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be awarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. So it's a way that I check out a lot of our programming over at awesemo.com. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to find the links for the podcast that you are looking for. Something I do want to mention about Bilal Muhammad. Of course, we talked about on the strategy show, Lewis Taylor, longtime fighter, is also a longtime coach, tested positive for COVID. So he is not in his corner this week. Replacing Lewis Taylor in his corner, Sayif Saud.
In whose corner?
Bilal Muhammad.
Interesting. I mean,
here's a kind of a, to bring this full circle. Remember when Jeff Neal took on Stephen Thompson? Yeah. Sayif Saud had COVID, so he couldn't be there for Jeff's biggest fight of his career. When you look at the streak that Bilal Muhammad has been on, who was the opposing coach who beat him? Sayif Saud.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, cornermen can make a difference, but if you're not used to being coached by somebody, or you don't, the coach doesn't really know the fighter, I don't really know if it's going to have too much of an effect. It's a cool narrative, and it's pretty neat when you think about it. I have some exposure to Muhammad, but I'm obviously a little hesitant in this spot against Leon Edwards, who I think has been so dominant in the division. The only question mark surrounding Edwards is just the absence, right? Like, if, say, he was coming off of like a 6 months or a couple months from his previous fight, I feel like we would be really leaning towards Edwards. But during the absence, Muhammad has really, gained some momentum in the UFC.
Yeah. Of course, Sayif Saud was already in Vegas because he's a coach of Ryan Spann. So just a little interesting note that I want to bring up there. Something else I wanted to bring up, something I was seeing in our Slack channel earlier today, was people talking about stacking. And look, we're not, this isn't MLB. This isn't NHL. This is MMA. Will it work at sometimes? No question. It will work at some point. But to me, it's got to be a 5-round fight. The percentage of a 3-round fight becoming optimal on both sides, getting the optimal lineup, I mean, it's very minuscule. But also, I think the new DraftKings scoring system really hurts stacking. It's just something I kind of wanted to bring up because there was a lot of messages about whether or not the stack fights. Now, the only time I will say to look at stacking fights, if it's 9 fights or less?
Yeah. So obviously the amount of fights on the card has a lot to do with whether stacking is viable, right? Because if, like say right here, we have 13 fights. I don't really believe that stacking is necessary, but on a shorter fight card when tons of fights get scrapped, and now you're looking for maybe a losing fighter puts up a decent score and is going to be a part of the optimal because that relief in salary allowed you to pay up in other spots. That's how it can work. In order for a stack to work on a big fight card like this, you would need Edwards to outperform people around his 9,000 salary. And then you also need Muhammad to basically outperform his salary at 7,200 and beat all the other underdogs or several underdogs that could possibly come through. It can happen, but I think that a stack on a 13 fight card is just not necessary. And I also think it comes down to the stylistic matchup, right? To me, this seems like a slower paced fight where if you're looking at, say NBA, and if you're a big NBA player, how a pace of a game can go. The defensive tendencies of a team, like they're going to slow the game down and they're going to be more methodical. And then instead of, just going crazy and cherry picking and everything. So I think that this isn't a reckless fight. And because it's not a reckless 5-round fight, I wouldn't recommend stacking.
Yeah, it's just something I did not want to do here. A stat that I do want to bring up, we talked about this last week and on a strategy show earlier this week, is betting underdogs. They are winning 37% in 2021. The betting favorites are 55, 35, and 1 with 2 pick'ems. 40 of those 55 wins have come via of a finish. So something to kind of note there when we're talking about these fights and how they're ending. That's always a stat we like to bring up, which, look, you gotta find those underdogs that you want to hit. In terms of some value plays, I mentioned on the strategy show, Ray Rodriguez is someone that I'm looking at, but let me put major asterisk on this. He's got to get out about the first 7-8 minutes of this fight. If the fight hits the 3rd round, live bet Ray Rodriguez. I do not have faith of Hani Yahya in the 3rd round. Now, I do have Hani Yahya as a MVP on FanDuel because I think there is a high potential he could win this fight via submission early on in this fight in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and I understand what you're saying. Obviously, like the cardio is to be questioned against Hani Yahya because in some fights he does look zapped and drained as the fight progresses because he's working so hard to get the fight to the ground or to maintain top control and work towards a submission that he's maybe blowing out his arms or just blowing out his energy attempting to finish the fight. I do think that he's an interesting 9,000 option because he goes for it. He knows what he's good at. His entire camp's going to be specialized around it. I understand the risk about his cardio kind of falling off a cliff after round 2 and how Rodriguez could potentially take advantage of it. I just don't really think Rodriguez is that good. I don't. And I just think that Hani Yahya, it's not a good stylistic matchup for him, in my opinion. I think Yahya is going to be able to implement his will, but I do have some exposure to Rodriguez. Of my 150 lineups, I think I have 3% exposure to Rodriguez because I have virtually no faith, but just in case it does happen, I kind of want to cover myself.
So over at Monkey Knife Fight, you want to play the prop bet, more or less significant strikes in this fight. Hani Yahya, 36.5. You go more or less?
Probably less.
Ray Rodriguez, 26.5.
I'd probably say less as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, if Hani Yahya's win this fight in the first round, you might as well just hammer less on both of those.
Yeah,
because that means he's got it to the ground, so that eliminates the significant strikes out of the aspect.
Yeah, that's exactly how I like to think of things, right? Like when I'm building DFS lineups for whatever sport, I try to think of how games could go. Like if a game blows out, maybe you want to target the bench. In a situation like this where you think Hani Yahya could get an early finish, well, those significant strike numbers are definitely inflated. And if you believe that's what's going to happen, then you hammer the less.
By the way, there's a question for you in Slack. They want a little clarification.
Okay.
Sam Cassell, Dance, says, did Pete just say 150 lineups? Did Pete also say he has span in all of his lineups?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I have Span everywhere, and you guys know I'm aggressive with it. I try not to hedge too much because I feel like every time I hedge too much, I end up not having the right combination. And I think that this is a nice leverage position because everybody saw the weigh-ins yesterday. So, Ryan Spann was sitting there looking down. He missed weight initially. He's looking down like John Jones does in his weigh-ins. So maybe people think that he had a horrible weight cut. I'm sure it wasn't the best, but I still think that, I'm having exposure to, the co-main event, and I want to be on the right side of it. And I've been doing really well in college basketball. So if I don't hit this, I'm okay with it. So, but I really think that Ryan Spann's the A side.
Before we get into the questions here, there's one other thing I want to bring up, and this has been a big topic in our Slack channel over the last day, and that's the Angela Hill Ashley Yoder fight. Look, Angela Hill's a better fighter, but let's not kid ourselves. There's a reason Angela Hill is a 3.5 to 1 betting favorite in this one. She's a better fighter. Yeah. Is there a path? No question. Now, I like Angela Hill on the FanDuel side of things more than I do on the DraftKings. I think the new scoring system hurts Angela Hill. Over on FanDuel, she's got a potential to break the slate. Let's remember, even though I'm pretty sure she was optimal last time on FanDuel in a loss against Michelle Waterson because she stopped 17 takedown attempts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. She's definitely a FanDuel play. She should be like one of the first fighters you put into your FanDuel lineups for sure. I think that Angela Hill's sneaky. And the reason I think she's sneaky is because people see 9,400 price tag attached to women's MMA. People already hesitant with that. They see the odds of this fight going the distance. They're hesitant about that. They see Angela Hill's finish rate at 42%. They're hesitant about that. So, I mean, all of that sounds like the most contrarian thing to happen is Angela Hill winning inside the distance, right? But it can happen due to volume and maybe unanswered strikes. And if she does do that, she'll probably break the slate with her volume. I mean, 5.7 significant strikes per minute, that is extremely high. I'm not guessing that she's going to go out there and finish Ashley Yoder. Yoder needs to, use the smaller cage to her advantage, take her opponent down, implement control, try to win some rounds. But in the past couple of years, you have seen Angela Hill be able to get back to her feet and start to, throw strikes relentlessly. And you saw even in the Michelle Waterson fight, yeah, she got taken down, but I think that yeah, exactly. But she's able to stuff how many? And on FanDuel, she was fine. So I like Angela Hill here quite a bit. Yoder's actually one of the fighters I unchecked, but you guys know, again, I'm aggressive. If you are a person out there that likes to hedge, there's definitely a path to victory for Yoder. I just find it extremely unlikely.
True, false. Ashley Yoder attempts at least 6 takedown attempts.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing is, and that's where I believe Angela Hill's potentially, even though she's the most expensive over on FanDuel, she's got the potential to break the slate she's just constantly defending takedowns. So that's something that you do got to think of. Now, of course, we do have a great promo going on over at Awesemo.com as to celebrate. It's the second half of the NBA season. We have a special deal for first-time users of Awesemo Plus. Get 50% off an Awesemo Plus weekly pass when you use the promo code Shamrock at checkout. That's $15 for full Awesemo Plus access to all the DFS, including MMA, NBA, PGA, NHL, and so much more just in time for March Madness. This offer is for first-time users only and is valid through March the 17th. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. And, of course, that promo code is Shamrock. Make sure to use that promo code to take advantage of that deal. So let's get right into the question, Pete. I know they've been lining up, so you can hit those up in our Slack account if you're an Awesemo Plus member. And or you can hit them up over in YouTube. So let's get right into it, Trey. Top 3 DraftKings picks and top DraftKings captains.
Well, you already know that I like Span a lot.
You're like the president of the Orion Span fan club today.
I like him. And I think that people see that he just lost to Johnny Walker. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can really trust either one of them, but I feel like you can trust Span a little bit more. Outside of that, right, we have a lot of high-priced fighters, going against some late replacements like Charles Jourdain going against Rojo. Rojo is a pretty dangerous fighter, but is bumping up the weight class. So I'm interested to see how he does in this fight against Jourdain, because Jourdain does have a 100% finish rate. In Rojo's losses, he's been submitted a lot, which is, I don't see Jourdain doing that, but Jourdain can actually put him in some bad spots and, check that chin of his and maybe work towards a finish. We have seen Rojo have to overcome some adversity. So I do like Jourdain a little bit, but I understand the Rojo underdog call because Jourdain has been 1-2-1 in the UFC and relatively underwhelming. And I also think another fighter that's in a smash spot, but more so, I thought so until I saw the weigh-ins, is Nasrat Haqparast. I didn't think he really looked the best at the weigh-ins, and he's fighting Rafa Garcia, who is stepping up. That this fight was basically put together on short notice anyways, but it's an interesting spot because you have an undefeated fighter who has a well-rounded game going up against Nasrat Haqparast, who specializes in his hands, and did get knocked out against Drew Dober. So I do have exposure to Garcia and Rojo as underdog plays, but I do also have plenty of exposure to the 9,000 options that I just mentioned.
Of course, this is MMA Live for Lock right here on Awesemo.com. Be sure to subscribe to also right here on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live on the channel. Of course, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. That does help us out a lot. Now, in terms of, I'm going to give you a sneaky DraftKings captain, and I think this guy is a sneaky DraftKings play based on what I'm seeing on ownership.
Let's see it.
Manel Kape.
I like it. I like it a lot. I do like it a lot. I took an aggressive stance on him as well. 93% finish rate, 15-5 overall, dynamite in his hands, good wrestling to rely on, stay out of the submissions, and I think he wins. Now, Jason, let me tell you something. We got 430 people checking us out right now, asking questions, preparing for the 5 p.m. slate. If we get our likes over 120, I'll tell you probably my second most highest exposed fighter on the slate.
We'll get into that. Yeah, it's we'll get into that as we do go on. I do want to mention some of the prop bets that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
So I mentioned about Misha by submission. I mentioned Ige by decision. I just mentioned about Manel Kape. How about plus 290 wins by TKO KO?
Yep.
The under 1.5 on Jourdain Rojo plus 145. And then I think you just hedge your bets here. Put 2 bets in. One, Jason Witt via submission plus 450. Jason Witt via TKO KO plus 504. Hedge your bets.
We talked about how we need this fight, right? And then sometimes, like, what's blatantly obvious sometimes just doesn't materialize how you think it's going to. If we do look at their finish rates, Semmelsberger is 7-2 with a 71% finish rate. Jason Witt is 18-6 with a 61% finish rate. What happens if Witt just completely ragdolls him for 15 minutes? He could still have a good score, but I do worry about that, finishing inside the distance. But if you look on the rest of the card, I'm smashing this fight because I think somebody's going to have a good score. I just don't know if it's a finish.
And maybe I'm wrong here. It feels like the first fight of the night has been a finish all year long.
That's why you hate it, right? I mean, you hate it in one way. You hate it because,
yeah. Here's the other thing. It's kind of like a 50, 60, 40 type fight.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, man, you feel like you might have to have it, but you don't feel really comfortable on one side or the other. I mean, if you sat there and said, oh, this guy's a 3-1 favorite, let me just smash him. But like, to me, it's a fight that you're going to have to hit. I think there's no question about it. Mitch, this question over from Slack, best DraftKings score in a loss. Casey, Tucker, Frey, or Anders?
Casey, Tucker, Frey, or Anders. In a loss?
In a loss. I think.
Go ahead.
I say you go 1 Tucker, 2 Casey, 3 Frey, 4 Anders.
Okay, guess what? We hit 120 likes. I told you when we hit 120 likes, I'll tell you my second highest exposed fighter. It just so happened. There we go. Nice. It just so happened. We, that the fighter was mentioned. Eric Anders is a guy that I am bullish on today as well. I am really bullish on Eric Anders. If you're looking under that 8,000 range, I'm looking at Ryan Spann and Eric Anders. I really am. I'm not saying you have to put them both in your lineups, but those are two fighters that I'm really targeting because outside the UFC, Anders did go to his takedowns quite often. Lots of ground and pound, has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a brown belt in his back pocket that he needs to start showing in the UFC when given the opportunity. Standing up, I think that he can match Darren Stewart on the feet. In Stewart's losses, he has been caught in submissions, guillotine chokes especially. So I really like Anders here. I think that the pricing on Stewart is like insane, $8,900. I'm not paying that, and I like Anders at $7,300. I think he can get it done for us.
3-5 in his last 8 fights. He has moved his training for this training camp out to Fight Ready. Of course, that's the gym the Pitbull brothers train at, Henry Cejudo trains at. So it's one of these things of I'm not sure what to expect out of Eric Anders. Look, if Eric Anders loses tonight, it wouldn't shock me if the UFC parts ways with him at that point. I mean, this is just a guy that just has not delivered the way they had hoped for. I mean, I understand where you're at. I get totally where you're going from. It's just that comfortability.
Yeah, I agree. And, I understand. Did you see how good Anders looked at the weigh-ins yesterday? I'm not kidding. He looks like probably the best in his entire career, like TRT Vitor type of stuff. He looked incredible.
Fight Ready has basically a weight cutting coach on their staff.
He looked incredible. And when I saw that, that's not like, oh my God, I saw he looked good at the weigh-in, so I'm punching him in my lineups. I think it's a good matchup. And I know that he's been underwhelming, but like in his losses, he's lost by decision. I don't have to worry about him going out there and getting finished. I mean, he has been rocked at times, but I think that he can get it done.
Matthew says, thoughts on Schmelzberger and Tucker for DraftKings cash?
Well, I think that Tucker is going to be a chalky 7K option, right? Tucker's going to be a chalky 7K option. I think that Schmelzberger offers you more finishing upside because of how Jason Witt is, defensively. He keeps his head on a straight line. And I think that Schmelzberger throws really, really hard. Even going against Carlton Minus, you did see some potential in his striking. But Tucker's up against a very tough opponent in Dan Ige. I still favor Tucker slightly, but that's like a fight that I'm okay with getting different and kind of like avoiding for the most part because I expect it to go the distance.
Yeah. Someone asked about, is Schmelzberger a good MVP play? Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think you just have to understand that that fight, because I do think there is a potential that Jason Witt does just take the fight to the ground, controls it there. I don't know what to make of Matthew Schmelzberger at this point, just based on, I don't want to, rag on his opponent last time, but,
yeah,
Jason Witt had a tougher opponent in his last fight. I'll just put
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's tough to gauge how somebody is when they're up against a tough test. And then previously they've been faced with, let's say, some softball matchups. And I do think that Carlton Minus fight was that. And Carlton Minus, you looked at his career and who he's fought. I was surprised that he was in the UFC, to be honest. But yeah, I'm excited for the first fight of the night.
By the way, just looking at ownership, the winner of Anders Stewart could end up being optimal based on what we're seeing on ownership. Just saying.
Told you.
Brad, who is going to Takedown City?
Okay, well, let me look. Well, I think like taking my Ryan Spann blinders off, I have to recognize that Misha Serkinov, lands 4.4 takedowns per 15 minutes, which is a good number, right? So if you're basing your lineups around, splitting exposure of the co-main event, which is what we recommend doing, I think that he's a guy that could potentially take his opponent down in Takedown City. Outside of that, right? You would like to think that Hani Yahya can secure some takedowns. Another fighter that I am thinking about, well, obviously I don't have rates for him because he hasn't, debuted in the UFC. Rafa Garcia, that should be the game plan here against Nasrat Haqparast, right? Like,
yeah,
don't stay on the outside and get picked apart by the explosive dynamic striker in Nasrat. I'm not saying he's going to take Haqparast to Takedown City, but that's something that he should be looking at. And probably the other fighter that would, stick out as like they need to go into the takedown well early would be Jason Witt against Semelsberger.
Yeah. Of course, when you're looking to make a bet on the fights, you got to find where the best lines are at. And the way you do that is head over to oddshopper.awesemo.com. Use OddShopper to find the best line available on the game prop bet that you are looking to bet to help you give you the edge to beat the house. Go to oddshopper.awesemo.com to check out those odds. By the way, you mentioned about Haqparast, biggest line movement we've seen this week. Of course, short nose fight. He has gone from minus 385 to minus 525. And on the other side, Jason Witt open plus 140. He's now plus 105.
Yeah, man. Let me say that Rafa Garcia impressed me on tape, right? Like, I understand that Nasrat Haqparast is really talented. But the grappling of Nasrat does worry me because you have seen it in the Marcin Held fight. Of how his opponents look to take him down to avoid those big hands. And Rafa Garcia on Combate Americas can strike well and resort to takedowns. He's an undefeated fighter. So I think that despite Haqparast being this big UFC name, the line should be closer. 5-1 is just insane, especially when you see that Haqparast didn't really look the best at the weigh-ins, and I thought Garcia looked better. I think a 3-1 would make sense, right? Because he's a UFC staple. But 5-1,
yeah, big one. SOG Sports says, "What's your thoughts on playing both Bilal and Edwards? If yes, what percentage of lines would you put them both in?" I'm gonna tell you my answer: 0.
Yeah, I'm not stacking tonight.
I get the thought process on this main event. You think it's going to go 25 minutes. You think it's going to play out entirely on the feet. But, when you're talking about this amount of fights on the card, just something I would not do. Look, maybe I'll end up being wrong, but just something I can't recommend. Speaking of takedowns, who's going to rack up takedown defense on FanDuel? It all starts with Angela Hill. I think that's the first one you look at. I don't think the fight lasts long, but Ryan Spann has that potential to stop some takedown attempts. Also, I would mention Ray Rodriguez against Hana Yahya because Yahya is going to want to try to get the ground, and Matthew Schmelsberger is the other one I'd point to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Schmelsberger because I think that he's a guy that's going to need to stuff the takedowns. Jason Witt can strike on the feet competently, but he needs to use everything to get a hold of his opponents and take him to the mat where he can execute good top control and work towards a finish. But I think that Schmelsberger on FanDuel from that defending takedowns perspective is a guy to consider. I think that Aldrich is probably going to have to defend some takedowns in the clinch. I think that's an interesting fighter, but I didn't really think she looked good at the weigh-ins. I thought Casey looked a lot better despite narrowly making it. I just think that Casey's in a good spot to pull the upset here. But yeah, I think that Hill is definitely the fighter to target on FanDuel.
So we already got Takedown City. You know what the next question's about?
What's up?
Who's going to throw them bungalows? I think it starts with Ryan Spann.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so too, man. Like,
it's his clear path to victory. His clear path to victory is stopping takedowns and forcing a kickboxing matchup.
Yeah. You know what, though? We've seen Rodolfo Vieira, right? Let's put this in perspective. I understand that Rodolfo Vieira is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world, right? Mm-hmm. There's no way before the fight I could have told you that his opponent was going to submit him with a guillotine because he was exhausted and hurt. That's the same thing that could happen to any of these fighters, right? When somebody gets fatigued, mistakes happen, and it just takes the other fighter, the opposing fighter, to take advantage of those mistakes. So a Spann guillotine would not surprise me if he's rocked and maybe exhausted Misha Serkinov.
This is a FanDuel cash question. Jourdain and Yoder or Casey and Nikolai? I would go Casey and Nikolai.
Yeah, I only really like one fighter from each of those, but I would say Casey and Nicolau.
Another FanDuel cash question. Edwards and Smellsburger versus Edwards and Serkinov.
You'll probably say the second. I'll say the one with Semmelsberger.
I like them both, but I would lean Martinez and Serkinov. The only concern I have with Jonathan Martinez is being able to rack up enough points if it's a 15-minute fight that primarily plays out on the feet and there's no knockdowns. I mean, that's the one thing when we talk about that DraftKings scoring system. If it's a 3-round fight that just plays out on the feet, if there is no knockdowns, there's no takedown attempts, the path to being optimal, I mean, you got to throw a ton of strikes to be optimal.
Yeah. Now, let me bring this up because the chat thinks I'm drunk today. I'm only drinking water. But let me just say, right, do you think that would you, Jason Floyd, rather have Davey Grant at 6,900 or Anders at 7,300?
Oh, Anders.
Yeah. So, like, for me, like, I understand that there's some bottom options. It's kind of just like, well, I don't like Davey Grant. I don't really like Ashley Yoder. I don't know what to expect out of Rojo and Garcia, but I am going to have exposure to him. And I think that Anders can maybe take advantage of this matchup. We'll have to see.
Well, the problem is I think people know that you're a self-proclaimed lightweight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, literally. If I had this much, I would be drunk for sure.
Let's just say last Saturday night I poured myself a stiff glass of Jack Daniels. Like, I took that first sip. I was like, woo, that was a little stiff, Jason. Let's see here. Cameron says, am I insane for backing Davey Grant?
No, because like this guy, Davey Grant, does have a win over Marlon Vera. Does have a win over Martin Day. Yeah, like crazy, right? That he has a win over Marlon Vera, but that was like a while ago. I think that Davey Grant can make things ugly. And when a fighter is able to make things ugly, that's when things get interesting in a fight, right? Like if he's able to, control it in the clinch, work towards takedowns, because that's how he's really had a lot of success. He's okay on the feet, but he likes to, take his opponents down and, control them. He has been submitted a lot. So a Jonathan Martinez submission would not really surprise me at all. I think Jonathan Martinez was kind of like fighting opponents here. And now this Davey Grant fight is a significant downgrade in opposition. The fight really doesn't make sense to me other than to keep your man active and to maybe get him a paycheck. I like Martinez, man. I really do.
Next question is related to FanDuel MVP in cash. Best MVP over $19.
It's Angela Hill.
Yeah. I was just kind of pulling up, looking at maybe some, I'm surprised by how little she's getting an MVP on FanDuel. I'm shocked by that number.
I'll tell you why I'm not so shocked, right? And we say it every week. People are biased about women's MMA. They don't want to deal with the headache. They don't want to deal with the headache, and they know it's going the distance.
Okay, so I'll bring that up because that was talked about in Slack, and I want to pull up the numbers that I put in Slack earlier because that was being talked about of women's fights being underowned. And I brought the fact of, well, why are they underowned? Decision rates at 115 pounds, 67.9%. Now, this is overall UFC history, female 115. Female 125, 60.9%. 135, 60.4%. 42.9 at 145. Comparison, the highest decision rate in men's division is featherweight at 54.8%.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I do get it. But there are some matchups that you can tell are most likely going the distance. And there are some that even if it does go the distance, they can still have a good DFS score. A decision is not like the end all for us for DFS players because especially a fighter that has a high volume, they can accumulate a lot. Now you're talking about Angela Hill in this new scoring system. She's going to have total strikes and significant strikes, which does help because a lot of times, what am I thinking of? The company that does the stats.
Metric.
Thank you. they don't always consider everything to be significant. So I do think that Angela Hill, 5.7 strikes per minute, it's just an interesting play. I don't see why I would be against it at all. I'm neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question you have to ask on Angela Hill is what do you believe she's going to land? So looking at her win, this is years ago against Jody Escobel, 117 significant strikes, 118 total strikes, got her 77.2 points.
Yeah.
I believe you pointed this out because you did the math on these, that DraftKings has adjusted all the old fights to the new scoring system.
Yes. But knockdowns happen, it's interesting, and stranger things have happened. And if, say, she does accumulate like 80 strikes and gets a finish, now that's a good score right there. So, we'll have to see, but it's Angela Hill for me on both platforms.
Yeah. By the way, I mentioned in terms of over under significant strikes over on Monkey Knife Fight. More or less, Charles Jourdain, 46.5.
I'm saying more.
I was thinking less. Marcelo Roja, 42.5.
Hard to know because I don't have his stats because he hasn't made his debut. It depends on the narrative of the fight. Like, do you think Jourdain gets rid of him quickly? Because then
that's what
you would take
I'm thinking.
less.
That's what I was leaning towards, going out with less is sitting there and saying fight ends under 1.5 rounds.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if it goes 15 minutes, Charles Jourdain
smash
4.1 strikes per minute. So do the quick math on that. He'll definitely, pass that.
Yeah, no question. FanDuel GPP, Honey Yaya or Jonathan Martinez? Okay, GPP, I say Honey Yaya. Cash, I say Jonathan Martinez.
You know what? FanDuel, right? You said FanDuel?
Yes.
Martinez is probably going to have to stuff some takedowns as well. I don't think Davey Grant's going to want to stand with him. So I would agree with you. GPP, Yaya's got the bump for finishing, 77% finish rate. So 77% of his 26 victories come by way of submission because he does not have a knockout. That is insane. And I think that Martinez with a 69% finish rate and being able to, defend some takedowns is still a strong play on FanDuel.
Next up, Yoder or Bilal Muhammad in a GPP?
Yeah, it's Muhammad for me, man.
Yeah, I would say Muhammad as well. I think a good chance that fight's going 25 minutes. Just
he could still score well. Like, I was looking, if you really compare their careers, Edwards has fought probably the more profile names, but Muhammad's been grinding, man. And Muhammad is competent in all areas. Like, Edwards is really tricky on the feet and a sniper like on the feet, but does mix in takedowns to really kind of like solidify the round. Okay, now I know I got round one. I'm really interested to see who's the better wrestler here, Jason, because I know that Muhammad likes to do the same thing too. He strikes enough and then resorts to takedowns.
Casey or Nikolai?
According to Casey, I kind of like her today. I think that Nikolai in 125-pound division is up against a tough opponent in Manel Kopp. Only 60% finish rate for Nikolai, whereas Courtney Casey, 78% finish rate. Do not expect her to get a finish, but maybe she can press her opponent against the cage, get some control time, and a decision win. More of a cash play, though. Yeah, I would definitely say more of a cash play.
Chris asked a question we already talked about stacking it, which Muhammad, I'll mention the second part of it. And I'm kind of down with this. Fading Angela Hill on DraftKings.
I mean,
steep price tag.
It's big price tag. Yeah, right. Like, if she was coming in like aggressively, like over owned, then I would say a fade would be fine. Like, I think that I would be okay with getting away from it. But I'm kind of neutral to it. If I landed on her, I landed on her. I do think that she's a strong fighter to get a victory tonight.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's about the price more than anything else. You're talking 9,400. You got to give me 100 points. And I just, in a 15-minute fight on DraftKings, I wonder what is that half.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's in a rematch, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you beat your opponent once, you want to go out and do it even better the second time so that there's no doubt, there's no question, there's no nothing. Obviously, that's like the narrative going on in Hill's mind. Like that's what her mission is. She wants to go out there and leave no stone unturned and make sure that everybody knows she is undoubtedly the better fighter here. Maybe she does work towards a finish, but I don't see that happening. In actually Yoder's losses, it's been a lot of decisions.
Mentioned about the questions we're getting in our premium Slack account. That is a great bonus we have to being a Awesemo Plus subscriber. It gives you access to our premium Slack account where you can sit there and ask myself and Pete questions. We're always in there answering questions. Of course, as I always say, just at me in Slack. That so I'll make sure I see those that come in there, and I always do try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm usually in front of pretty much in front of the computer most of the day, so I do try to get in there. But that is a great advantage. So of course we got that great promo going on. You see it there at the bottom of the screen for first-time users of Awesemo Plus. Get 50% off by using that promo code Shamrock. Of course, be sure if you're not subscribed here to Awesemo, hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you know the show is live here on the channel. Hit that thumbs up button if you like what you're hearing here. Of course, coming up after us in 15 minutes from now will be the NBA Deeper Dive to get you ready for tonight's NBA action. Matt asks, who do you think is the best DraftKings cash play, 7,500 and under?
Well, cash play, right? I mean, like I would probably say Bilal Muhammad would be a strong one because you know that it's most likely going the distance and that he's been the more active fighter, can get you a decent score. And that's kind of like in cash, he's cheap. So you can plug him in there in hopes that it does go 5. Maybe he overperforms and gets a victory here against the fighter who's been absent from the cage. And then with that relief in salary, you can spend up and get some other studs. I think that would be the cash play for me.
By the way, Michael wants to know your NASCAR plays tomorrow, so he knows who to fade, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll let everybody know tomorrow. But you know, it happens every week. Whoever I roster, they're the first one out.
Is Paula a contrarian pivot from 9K options in a DraftKings single entry?
I'm glad that we somebody, thank you for the listener that asked about the Paula, right? So, because we haven't really touched on this fight. You're talking about Jinh Yu Frey, a veteran atomweight champ outside the UFC, Invicta, 33% finish rate. So that's really not impressive at all. De Paula, 5-2. She's green. And what I mean by that is that she's just, she's new to MMA and there's probably a lot that she needs to learn. And on the regional tape, she has a deficiency in her takedown defense. I think that if she's been working on that, which I'm sure she has, that she could actually maybe perform well here because Jinh Yu Frey really is like, she hasn't been doing anything. It's an interesting fight for me. I kind of took like a step back and looked at this fight, and 8,800 is a lot for a debuting fighter against a former champ. I still favor the newcomer De Paula, but like a Frey upset, Jason, like I had to get some exposure there just to kind of cover my bases.
This is another topic we haven't touched on, but Brent over in Slack says, does the layoff in the 600-day layoff training camp have a negative, as they like to call ring rust, going to have a play in Edwards' output?
Hard to tell, right? Like it is hard to tell. I will tell you that for me, for my career, I've had plenty of layoffs and plenty of time on the shelf. And with that time on the shelf, you're able to heal your body. Maybe you are restricted because you're healing from injuries, so you can't train as much as you want. Maybe you're having a hard time getting fights, which I know that was the case for Edwards. If he's just been grinding in the shadows so he can shine in the spotlight, I think that, maybe it might be a performance of y'all must have forgot, but it's hard to say that. What'd you say, 600 days or something ridiculous like that? That's a lot, Jason. That I have done I think I've even had a longer layoff than that. And I went in and I had a good performance, but every fighter's different. Every fighter's different. And I think that Edwards shouldn't be affected by it too much. I mean, it depends on his commitment to the sport. If he's a guy that only trains during his fight camps, well, we might have a problem here. If he's a guy that trains year round because it's his passion, I wouldn't really think about it.
Yeah, it's weird at the top of that UFC welterweight division. It just seems like guys are just very picky and choosy, and of who potentially to fight there. Brad says a little late to the show, So sorry if this was covered, but does Grant have a chance as a dog? If not, who else do you guys prefer in the low range?
I mean, Grant, he landed a beautiful left hook against Martin Day, and really he got dropped early in that fight, and I don't think people realize that. And Martinez can probably drop him in this matchup and maybe finish him via submission or TKO. I understand that the line is suggesting that it's going to go the distance, but a Martinez inside the distance would not really surprise me. I think that at 6,900, I'd rather try some other fighters. Like, obviously, if you want exposure to Grant, he does have an 83% finish rate. I get it. But like a Rojo, a Garcia pick, I understand that they're fighters, stepping up, on short notice against pretty, stiff opposition. But at least they bring that unknown factor, and they have nothing to lose. I will say that Garcia probably has a nice wrestling path to victory.
Yeah, it's just going through some of the questions. It's some of the stuff. It's amazing. Yeah, Pete's not drinking, by the way.
Yeah, right. Everybody thinks I'm drinking. I said I like Ryan Spann and Eric Anders, and then everybody's saying I like Davey Grant's going to break the slate. Like, come on, give me a break. Like, Davey Grant is facing Martinez. He can probably win that fight, right? We've seen Martinez drop his debut against Andre Sukumtat, right? I understand that, but like, I think that Eric Anders has a legitimate chance to upset a guy that's probably overpriced in Darren Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Like someone mentioned about, Jonathan Martinez landing 100 strikes. Okay, so it's 40 points.
Yeah.
Plus 30 for a decision win.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
that's
not you like that. That's the thing in this new DraftKings scoring system. If we're talking about you have the same amount of significant strikes and total strikes. Okay, so that's 0.4, per that, for those strikes there. It's that path to getting over 100 if you don't get knockdowns or you don't get takedowns.
Okay, but it also depends on the type of DFS player you are, right? Like,
yeah.
If you only care about either being first or last, then maybe you view Martinez as like, he just doesn't do it for me because there's other 9,000 options that have more of a GPP potential. But if you're okay with, min cashing or even cashing in the middle, I think Martinez is like one of the safest, fighters on the card to get a victory outside of Angela Hill.
Question about the 9K fighters on DraftKings and if we could rank them. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 6 9K fighters.
Depends on it depends on.
Let's start DraftKings. Yeah, let's just say DraftKings GPP. I would say Edwards 1.
Wow.
Yaya 2.
They're kind of all the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, like I said, I like Angela Hill more on FanDuel than I do DraftKings. Hawk Barras, I mean, it's a short nose fight, it's tough.
It is tough, right? Like, they kind of all blend the same. Like, they have an ugly path to defeat for all of them, right? Like, I'm really confident. Like, my confidence level in Angela Hill is pretty high. My confidence level in Leon Edwards is decent. Like, I think that he should win. Next to Angela Hill, the next fighter I have a lot of confidence in is Martinez for sure. Jourdain, 1-2-1 in the UFC, disappointed me a ton. I feel like I've been backhanded by him 4 times now, so I don't understand what's going to happen in this fight. Yaya, I'm pretty confident in that. And Hawk Barras, man, if Hawk Barras was cheaper, like at 8,900, 8,800 or something like that, I'd be hammering it. But 9,400 does leave me, a little worried.
Let's get a couple of rapid fire in before we get out of here. Of course, coming up next is NBA Deeper Dive. By the way, along with MMA Fire Projections being free on the site, NBA player rankings and NHL player and top stack rankings are free content on the site. Muhammad and DuPaula or Edwards and Grant. Does not say which platform.
God. Muhammad and DePaula, I guess.
Best $12 or lower play on a FanDuel GPP.
$12 or lower. Anders.
Who is 2 must-have 9K fighters for single entry?
Martinez and Edwards.
Next up, see, he says, I'm getting on the span bandwagon with Pete. The last 3 fight cards have proven that heavy strikers are winning at an alarming rate, especially underdogs. If we lose, at least we lose together.
That's right. And I'm going to lose all 150 lineups if he loses.
Anders or Tucker in DraftKings?
I like Tucker. I really do, but it's Tucker's safer. Anders for me, though.
Hill or Yaya, FanDuel, or DraftKings cash?
Hill.
Which dog would you fade in a single entry that's highly owned?
Which dog would you fade?
Nikolai.
I think that's a good one. I'm glad you said that.
Manel Kopp, I think, is potentially, look, he took on a tough opponent's UFC debut. He could be the slate breaker tonight. So we'll see how it all goes down. Of course, coming up next here on Awesemo is NBA Deeper Dive. So stay tuned as those guys will get you ready for tonight's NBA action. Good luck to everyone tonight in your UFC lineups. And myself and Pete will be back on Thursday as we are going to get you ready for UFC 260, Miocic versus Ngannou 2.